For those of you who are coming in and seeing one of these videos for the first time without prior context, I'm John Landrum. I'm one of the co-founders of this movement we're calling the neutral ground, and what we're trying to tackle is the health of our civic discourse. And our guest talker today is Cara Peterson, and thank you for being here, Cara. Cara is a sometime educator at McGee's School. She's taking a year off to write and publish a book. And the book's name, Cara?
The Effortless Perfection Myth. And it's actually out September 20th.
September 20th. Well, we'll have to make sure that'll be before this thing gets broadcast. So for those of you who want to go, if you like this interview and want to read Cara's book, it's not on this topic, but it's still, I'm sure, a very good book, and I'm going to buy it. So make sure, if you're a listener, make sure you go expose yourself to it. Anyway, Cara, so thank you again for being here. So there was a small group of us, there was a core group of us that roughly 1 year ago, I would say September of 2021, started talking somewhat earnestly about our view. Perhaps the biggest problem right now in our society is that we can't talk to each other. And a mutual connection of ours put us in touch and told me that Cara Peterson, John, is already on this. Cara is already thinking about this and doing something about this in the classroom. So give us that origin, Cara. How long ago were you seeing this? What were you noticing, and why did it bother you?
Absolutely. I would say it didn't start with me. It was actually on our administrator's radar going into the 2022 election. And they actually came up with a set of civil discourse guidelines for our school. Some of those included committing as members of a scholarly community to seek out rich and varied points of view. Another one was to recognize that the world we inhabit and its people and histories are complex, and we need to learn to embrace ambiguity and nuance, and also be okay with not having clear resolution in all of our intellectual conversations. So leading up to that election, I had a workshop that I attended that was incredible, because as I was sitting there, I was thinking everything that we're talking about here with civil discourse perfectly lines up with this book that I'm teaching, 12 Angry Men, which, if you have not read, is essentially 12 men in a jury room, and they're discussing the fate of a young boy's life. And we see people who are committed to civil discourse, and we see people who are not. So I have found that it was really easy to just plop this topic in there with the resources that I'd already been given through our school community, through this program I attended. And really taking it into mind that it is important as a teacher that I teach my students how to be helpful, productive members of a democratic society. And part of that includes knowing how to have conversations with people that you disagree with. And I deeply believe it's so important that we actually actively educate people on this topic.
Cara, one of the things you said was seeking out differing points of view. I bet. So I'm 64 years old, and guess what? I have changed my mind a couple of times in life. As you get more experience, you say, okay, I think I see this thing differently. I don't think that would have been true for me if I'd never been exposed to contradictory views other than my own. So we seem to have to agree, I think, that being exposed to people who disagree with you is good for us if we're committed to actually understanding the world.
Absolutely. I've definitely noticed that in the classroom, there's moments where that civil discourse starts to fall apart. And, I have to really step back in and make sure that the classroom, again, remains a space where we know how to do this. And I, as the authority figure, am making sure that we're being trained in how to do that.
Yeah. And you told me before that you try to make it, the word safe is kind of a trigger word right now out there in the world. Like some of us conservatives can look at people who are trying to create a safe place, meaning, no, you're safe from anybody who disagrees with you. You're not, that's not what you mean by safe. You're saying it's safe to have disagreement, but part of that is making boundaries, right? It's within the boundaries of mutual respect. It's within the boundaries of limited, there's no physical intimidation. There's no, bullying going on. It's just saying what you think and feeling free to say what you think.
Yes. So I absolutely think that there are boundaries and expectations that individuals need to be able to hold each other to when engaging in civil discourse for it to remain civil discourse. So, for example, I mentioned earlier that my school put together those civil discourse guidelines, and the biggest line in there that's actually bolded is they draw the line when it comes to language that dehumanizes others.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, and I'm going to read this, language that demeans other individuals or groups of people on the basis of their gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, age, or ability. So, in order to engage in civil discourse, you have to feel like that person is coming to you as a, person to person conversation. And holding those boundaries is actually important for maintaining civil discourse, because if you allow someone to push those boundaries, then it's not civil discourse.
Once I feel threatened, it's harder for me to listen to opposing points of view, right? I'm going to fight or flight mode. Now we want to create a world where the mere fact of disagreement is not threatening to me, but that's different from bullying and intimidation and demeaning, I think is your view. So I'm one of these guys. I'm not doing anything yet, right? I'm in this group. I'm celebrating people like you who are doing something. What are you doing to make this real? So when you're in the classroom working on this, this is like an artist question, right? So what are you good at? What are you noticing that what makes you effective at doing this?
As a teacher, I take my role in the lives of young, impressionable individuals very seriously. And I think that a lot of people don't necessarily recognize that, if you are a teacher who, is trusted or looked up to or this or that, how much, how influential you can truly be. And so for me, I have found it really important that I educate myself on topics that might impact students who have different identity markers than me. So, I am a white, straight female who has had a wonderful education. I'm quite privileged. And I need to be able to keep that in mind when I'm trying to work with and address students who maybe are students of color or LGBTQ students or things along those lines. I make sure that I study a lot of that ahead of time, because I think that say I am a white teacher in a classroom where all the students except for maybe 2 in that classroom are also white. Maybe you're one of there's 2 students of color. If you're one of them, you're probably not going to feel like, okay, I can definitely speak up on X, Y, and Z topic that feels very personal to me, unless you feel like that authority figure that's in the room is going to make sure that, again, civil discourse is going to occur. Unless they feel like, okay, I can have this conversation in this room because I trust that this adult figure gets, understands the dynamics I need them to understand. Understanding power dynamics, I think, is also an important part of civil discourse. And you need to make sure that everyone in the room feels comfortable bringing their diverse point to the conversation in the first place.
What's hard for you? So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but so we're all, when we think about ourselves as professionals, and you're a teaching professional, as you try to reach these objectives, what are you still trying to get better at? You'd be more effective managing and coaching civil discourse if you honed what aptitude?
I think I'm still working sometimes on how to effectively allow a student to know when they've exited out of that civil discourse space without making them feel embarrassed or ashamed.
Yes.
Shame completely it ends the conversation. They go
Yep.
into self-defense mode, and it's the whole cancel situation. It is extremely difficult to recognize, okay, we're moving out of civil discourse now. How do I bring us back in while still making sure everybody feels heard and seen and, comfortable? And that can be really hard because I
Mm-hmm.
think different people in the room are looking for different things from you. I remember my first year of teaching, I taught US history, and there was a day where the students came back in, and it was when there was all that talk of World War III,
Yep.
because that I believe it was an Iranian military leader had been assassinated or killed, or whatever term we want to use there. And so my students said to me, Miss Peterson, we want to understand this better. Like, we're learning US history, but this is also a current event and we want to understand. So I put together a lesson plan that, pulled from as many different news sources, the Associated Press, which is known to sort of be more of a middle ground, and presented them with, past information, the history of, what's been going on over there, U.S. involvement, and then opened up the room for discussion. And about 20 minutes in, there were two students that were screaming at each other. And I really, as a first year teacher, had not expected that. I had expected to be able to say, let's tone this down, and to have them tone it down. But it was getting into an area they felt so strongly about. And so I've definitely had to learn as a teacher, like, you need to have classroom management and like discipline plans in place as well, to sort of set the stage for, this is what I expect in this classroom. And if you cannot, meet these civil discourse guidelines, and in this case it was people from both sides who couldn't meet, then I'm going to need you to go take a lap or something and come back when you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you confident? So I think this is a major problem. And the people that are increasingly affiliating with us on this are saying, oh my God, it's a major problem. Thank goodness somebody's working on it. But it's a big problem. Is it solvable? You're one of the people who's actually doing something. Are the good guys going to win here? Do you think civil discourse is going to get incrementally better over time through the efforts of you and people like you?
God, that is a very big question. I think that I wouldn't feel good about myself and my work if I didn't at least feel like I'm doing my part.
Amen. That's so beautiful, because that's why I'm in this. I don't know if we're going to win, lose, or draw, but how can you duck it, right? How can you not chip in? That's a beautiful answer. By the way, if you're watching this, this is unrehearsed. It's all spontaneous. Cara is like naturally wonderful. This is not scripted. And Cara, I'm so happy that you're doing this. I also salute your school. Please give the feedback to the group that you credited earlier. Tell them about what we're doing and that you gave them credit, because that's appropriate. They should get it. I hope anybody listening to this sees something to celebrate in this, because I think there is. Buy Cara's book, buy and buy the armload. And Cara, I'm going to call you as you get to milestones, as you keep working this.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd be a great re-invite back. I'd like to talk to you again. I also, your 12 Angry Men text, the thing that you teach, what I'm hearing is you do kind of a play-by-play. This is a good example. That's an example of bad behavior. I think that'd be a beautiful thing to walk through. I think that's probably a future interview if you're willing to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Cara, is there any question I haven't asked that you were kind of hoping I would? What were you hoping would come out in this session?
I would say I think in terms of the negative influences, we really need to be aware of for children, for young people, for students, that make them less likely to engage in civil discourse. I think that a lot of young people these days are being pulled away from civil discourse, particularly because social media platforms are really pushing this mindset of, a more polarized mic drop, if you will. So you're on Twitter and someone says this, and the response is not intended to open up the conversation. It's intended to shut somebody else down. I think that's pretty harmful. I also think that, these are the platforms that a lot of our students are paying the most attention to. So we need more places where civil discourse is being modeled. I also think they see the way that today's politicians are acting on the national stage. If you think of the last round of presidential debates, it wasn't exactly what the example we want to be setting for young people. So I think it's really important, again, to be teaching young people something you said before. And I actually have a literal slide in several of my lesson plans where I come back to this, where I say it's not a failure to discuss a topic and change your mind. It's okay to decide, what, I didn't have enough information then, but I have enough information now. And instead of holding on and defending this one position because that was the first position I took, I'm going to recognize that I have more information now, and I'm able to sort of make that decision. So that's what I think we need to work toward when it comes to educating our young people today.
Thank you. I don't want to have a long conclusion because I don't want to cheapen the currency. This was golden. Thank you. I'm going to wrap. I'm going to call this a wrap. And I will be back in touch, Cara. Thank you very much, and good luck with the book.
Thank you.